Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we have the brand new Tier 10 Pan American Battleship Libertad in port to review for you guys today. This is the first time in a long time that I've actually snatched one of these ships up during the early access event because this ship is one I am quite excited for. If you can't tell, man, just the amount of secondaries on this ship make me exceptionally happy. So we went ahead and picked it up so that we can review it for you guys here on the channel. And that, of course, leads me into thanking the Patreon supporters of this channel. This review, quite literally, would not be possible without the Patreon supporters of this channel. I'm not a CC, so I do not get these ships in any way, shape, or form free in order to try them out beforehand. So we got to wait for them to come out. Usually with the Techline ships, I would wait for the early access event to be over with. But this is a line that I have been quite excited for, and look how wide this thing is on the rear. But anyway, massive shout out to those Patreon supporters. If you wish to support the channel, doing so on Patreon is the best place to do so, besides of course watching the videos and the streams. And that is my Discord and not yours. Sorry about that. But yeah, thank you guys that support me on Patreon for making this review and all ship reviews possible. So anyway, the Libertad, what is this thing? It's essentially a giant Atlantico. You know, the whole line is basically Atlantico, but bigger. If you don't know, Atlantico is the Tier 8 Pan American battleship right here. And it caught the attention of everybody because if you take a peek here, she has a couple of 234mm secondary guns. Those are quite large guns to be secondaries. Usually secondaries top out at, 150s. Some of them might touch the 2s, but 234mm, some big guns. And the Libertad, which is, again, the Tier 10 of this new tech line, has 20 234mm guns as secondary guns. So, yeah, cruiser caliber secondary guns in a super dreadnought fashion is what we got here at the Libertad. Because this line is a what if the, South American dreadnought race continued on and didn't peter out in, the early late 1910s, early 1920s-ish, so it's a nice what-if line, and Wargaming has to do more of these what-if lines, obviously, going forward now with all the ships that are in the game. But anyway, we're going to take a look at the Libertad today, go over its stats and its quirks and features, and give you guys a score for it when we get to the gameplay review section. So let's go ahead and jump on in. So, obviously, this is a tech line ship, so there is not a any type of economic bonus associated with it. So if you want that, you got to purchase that for yourself. So again, tech line ship there. In terms of the camouflage, the perma camo looks like this. The camo you get right now in the early access event looks like this. You got some nice, South American style art on there. It's not as gaudy as some of the other early access ships. I actually prefer this. That is still my Discord, and I muted it too. Sorry, fellas. But anyway, yeah, one of the better early access camos in my humble opinion. But we're going to rock the more historical looking camo there on out for this review. Alright, it's armor now. So you got a 32mm nose, 51mm side, 51mm side. Okay, so it's all 51 on the side, and then 32mm stern, 32mm bow and deck. 51mm midsection. That's nice because, look at all that deck space there. If that was thinner, that would not be great with all those light cruisers just melting you down there. And see, the turrets are 419mm face, cheeks are 280mm, sides are 229s, and then the rears are 229s, tops are 184. Let's take a look at the innards, shall we? Let's see. Okay, so the Citadel is above the water, but you do have the torpedo protection blocking it, and you do get a bit of an angle outward there. 406mm belt there on the Citadel. Is that all the way across? It is. So you got the torpedo protection for, again, kind of that spaced armor effect. How well would that work? I don't know. And then the top does also drop down as well. That 51mm section kind of blocks it as well. So again, you get kind of a spaced armor effect going on there. And sometimes it'll save you like it does the French ships. Sometimes it really won't matter. But again, we'll see what it's like when we get to playing it. Alright, HP, 85,000 HP. Pretty low for a tier 10 battleship. 31% torpedo damage reduction. For the guns, you get 12 419mm, so 16-inch guns. And looks like turret number 3 faces backwards. Is that the only one? Because again, it's in that that dreadnought style of battleship. So turret number 3 is the only one that's facing backwards, you know, of the usual set that should be facing forwards. Oh yeah, but the shells though, 33-second reload time. That's kind of long. Maximum dispersion of 265 meters at 20.5 kilometers. The HE does a maximum damage of 6,100, 34% fire chance, and 70 millimeters of armor penetration. 804 meters a second is what it's coming out of the tubes as. 419mm AP shells do 11,700 maximum damage, and those guys come out the tubes at 747 meters a second, so slower than the HE. Secondaries, you have 8 of the, what looks like American 127mm guns with a 5-second reload time, 8.3 kilometer range for these guns. They pin 21 millimeters of armor, have a 5% fire chance, and 1800 alpha rating. And those shells come out the tubes at 792 meters a second. And then the 234s. Get more of these than the 127s. God, I love that. 11-second reload time, 8.3 kilometer maximum range base. 3,850 maximum damage, 21% fire chance, and 59 millimeters of penetration. That is great. With an initial velocity of 761 meters a second out of the tubes. You get 2 charges of the ASW airstrike, and they drop 2 bombs per payload in a range of 11 kilometers around your Libertad. AA rating is 80, so it looks like you got 16 single-mounted Oerlikons. You got 20 dual-mounted 20mm Oerlikons, so many Oerlikons. 16 dual-mounted 40mm Bofors. 4 quad-mounted 40mm Bofors, and then the 127mm guns are dual-purpose. I'm assuming this is like the British built it, the Americans overhauled it in the middle of World War II. That's what we're going for here, judging by the hardware that's on the ship. 30-knot top speed, a turning circle radius of 910 meters, and a rudder shift time of 13.6 seconds. Consummate of 16 kilometers base. Woof, that's that ain't small, to say the least. Alright, so let's take a look at her equipment. Oh, dang, all she gets is a heal? Alright, so kind of a good heal, though. 513 HP back per second. That's pretty good. 28-second action time and a 60-second cooldown time. 4 charges base. Get a 20-second action time damage con there. That's also pretty good. The cooldown time of 80 seconds. And we get combat instructions. So what it do? So let's see, you get a 20% buff to your secondary battery firing range, a 20% buff to the reload time, a 30% buff to the damage, dang, and it's active for 30 seconds. How do you fill it though? Oh, all you gotta do is receive 1,000. Okay, so receiving 1,000 HP potential damage gets it up by 0.15%. And then hitting targets with the main battery shell. Okay, that made more sense. I was about to say, wait, all I gotta do is get shot at with the potential damage, and I get my magic secondaries. That's great, but no, okay, it does add to it, but obviously hitting main battery shells is what you be wanting to do, because that recharges it by quite a bit more. Although you do eat a lot of damage, a lot of potential damage with battleships, so we'll see what it's like in game. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and throw a commander and module build on the ship. I'll meet you guys right back here. Alrighty, fellas, we are obviously going with the secondary build on the Libertad. So I don't know what else you were expecting here, but anyway, so we went with auxiliary armaments mod 1. Since we are dumping so many modules and commander skills into our secondaries, we want them to stick around, and this increases the survivability of the secondary guns by 100%. Same with the AA mounts. Then we went with damage con mod 1, which gives us a buff to our chance of catching fire and catching a flood. So obviously, like I mentioned in yesterday's video, fires suck, so do floods. Any opportunity we have to decrease the chance of that happening, we're going to take it. Then secondary battery mod 1, which gives us a 20% buff to the firing range of the secondary battery guns and a 20% buff to their dispersion. And then we went with Damage Con mod 2 because, again, fires and floods suck, and this decreases their burn and flood time by 15%. So the less time we're burning, the less time we're flooding, the less damage we are taking. And then I went with Concealment Systems mod 1. This gives us a 10% buff to the detection range of our ship, and, well, the lower your detection range, the easier it is to get out of an unfavorable situation, so that's why we took it. And plus, we get the dispersion debuff to the shells that are fired at us. And then finally, I went with Auxiliary Armaments mod 2, which gives us a 20% buff to the reload time of the secondary guns, and a 15% buff to the continuous AA damage and the damage from the flak. Is that going to be that helpful? We'll see. Alright, then for the commander, I just swapped my Atlantico commander on over here to the Libertad. So we're going with Preventative Maintenance, which gives us a 30% buff to the chance of our modules becoming incapacitated, like the rudder and the steering gears. The rudder and the steering gears. The steering gears and the engine. Obviously, a battleship with no engine and no rudder is a not happy battleship. It also increases the survivability of the secondaries by another 15% and the AA guns by another 15% as well. Then have Grease the Gears on here to help out with the turret traverse speed. When you are in a brawling situation, having the faster turrets a lot of times can help. And then, of course, we took long-range secondary shells for another 20% buff to our secondary range, and manual secondary battery aiming. This is where the secondaries get another 10% buff to their reload time and the dispersion, but after firing for 45 seconds, you get a 50% buff to the secondary accuracy. So get the secondary shells hitting their target. Adrenaline Rush because, well, if you are going to take damage, you need to get something out of it. So for every 1% of HP damage that you take with Adrenaline Rush, you get a 0.2% buff to the reload time of your main battery guns and your secondary battery guns as well in the case of the Libertad. Emergency Repair Expert for an additional charge of our heal and damage con. Well, we have unlimited damage cons, but if we had the Soviet-style damage con, we get another one. And they both run for 10% longer now, so more healing time, more health back, more damage control time, less fires being started during that runtime, and floods too. And finally, I took Consummate Expert because on the Atlantico, you can get your detection range down to your secondary battery maximum range. I'm just leaving that here because I don't feel like paying to respec Fernando here, just to get the Fire Prevention Expert. Normally, I would recommend taking this. We'll try them with Concealment, and if I'm getting burned down a lot, I will suggest you take Fire Prevention Expert, but you could take either or. It's just up to your preference of playstyle. Alright, so what does that do to the ship? So now, nothing there's changed. Secondary battery, we're out to 12.5 kilometers now with the flag, so that's pretty good. The 127s have a 3.4 second reload time now. And the 234s have a 7.5 second reload time now. So that's pretty good. Again, we have 20 234s, 10 per side. Let's see. What was the AA range? I think I glossed over that. 5.8 kilometer AA, so that's more usable than like the Victorias yesterday. Top speed with flag is 31.5 knots. And now our concealment's down to 13 kilometers. So within half a kilometer of getting spotted, you can shoot whatever's spotting you with your secondary guns. It's not terrible. It's actually pretty solid in my humble opinion. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, go into battle with the Libertad. I'll meet you guys there for a voiceover first impressions review. Alright, fellows, voiceover Sealord here, and this thing's freaking insane, guys. Oh my god. When you're in a situation where you're receiving fire from multiple sources, you're still getting shots on target with the main battery guns, that just shoves the damage output potential of the Libertad through the friggin' roof into the stratosphere. It turns out having essentially a Goliath bolted to either side of your ship and the ability to press the F button and increase those secondary guns' fire rate and damage by 20% for the fire rate, 30% for the damage is actually insane. So what that does, because this is the main thing about the ship, right? This is what it gives up its its health for, it's what it gives up, you know, a larger main caliber gun for, and it's what it gives up that, you know, decent-ish second reload time on the main battery guns for, because, you know, 12 20 not 20-inch guns, 12 16-inch guns by tier 10 isn't exactly crazy nowadays. So, you know, you're giving up all those things for this secondary firepower, so that's why I'm starting off here. But yeah, that F key, when you push it, it just turns your Libertad into a damage hose. Like, it is insane what these secondary guns do. I know I've said it like 3 times in a row, but that's the best way I can describe it. So, what it does is pushes your secondaries out to, if you have a full-on secondary build for your Libertad, your secondaries now go out to 15.1 kilometers. That is longer ranged than what the Hanover secondaries do. The Hanover secondaries go out to 14 kilometers. Granted, this lasts for only 30 seconds. So for 30 seconds, you can reach out to 15 kilometers with your secondary guns. You know, again, your Goliath that you have on either side of your ship, and it gets a 20% buff to your reload time and a 30% buff to the damage that these shells are doing. So that means, as you'll see in the background footage, you'll be chunking other battleships at range with your HE off of your secondaries for like 7,000 damage. Like every couple of times, you know, you have a couple of shells hit, it's like, oh my god, I'm doing like 8k, 9k, 10, 11, 12k a salvo with these secondary guns for this 30 seconds. Now, obviously, of course, when you dump Adrenaline Rush on top of that, that increases the damage output even further of your secondary guns. And what's even crazy is that I don't have the new unique commander for the Pan American ships yet, which has a skill that even buffs the, the reload time of these secondaries even further. So this isn't even like peak insanity yet, fellas, here with the secondary guns on the Libertad. Now, of course, imagine targeting a destroyer with these guns. It just melts them. Because again, you have those 10 234mm guns per side that, again, with their alpha rating, just shred destroyers. Especially again when you have the F key going, you get the reload booster and stuff to the secondary guns. And then let alone cruisers, I mean, like, this thing just melts stuff for those 30 seconds. Now, even when those combat instructions aren't activated, the secondaries are still really friggin' good. Again, you still have 20 234mm guns per side on top of the 127mm guns that you have on each side as well. So, like, the secondary suite is really nice either way. So that's just, again, absolutely ludicrous. And remember that to fill up the bar to activate the F key, all you have to do is take damage and get hits on target with your main battery guns. And there were some situations where the CV was focusing me, 1 or 2 cruisers were focusing me, so my bar was getting filled up ridiculously fast. And I didn't even realize that it was already ready to go, because I only fired my main battery guns once in between using my F key, because there's no cooldown time on it. You just got to fill that bar back up. So in situations when you're receiving a lot of heat from the enemy team, that bar fills back up incredibly fast, so you can just pop the F key again, you know, almost back to back, it seems. Well, I mean, you can if you are receiving enough potential damage. So that's just ludicrous at times, and man, it is just downright goofy what this ship can do. Now, of course, that's all in the caveat of you got to be in secondary range, right? And obviously that doesn't happen too much at tier 10 in most matches. Now, obviously, you can get, you know, very fortunate with your matchmaker, and you might have a couple of these rounds back to back. And yeah, you're going to be absolutely insane in those situations. But of course, for most other situations, most other normal tier 10 situations, you are stuck with a ship that has about 20,000 less HP on average than what you'll find at tier 10. It has, you know, 419mm guns, so it has the bigger 16-inch guns, but there's still 16-inch guns at tier 10, and you don't have, of course, like the Montana dispersion or the dispersion module that the American battleships will get. And you have a 33-second reload on those main battery guns. So that means in a good amount of situations you're going to be finding yourself in when you are playing higher tier with your Libertad, you are, in most cases, a worse Montana, or I guess you could say a worse Conqueror because you have the Conqueror's guns, right? So that is what you're going to be finding yourself in. And again, you have 20,000 less HP and an armor scheme that, well, coated in 52 millimeters of armor, which is really, a giant middle finger to, again, a lot of cruisers that they're doing their bestest to get their HE shells pitting 32 millimeters of armor. It's a lovely middle finger to them, but from long range against larger caliber battleship guns, you're not having a great time. So there is that. Another thing, too, about the Libertad is that it's way more maneuverable than I thought it was going to be. I kind of glossed over that 13-second rudder shift time in port, but it's really maneuverable. It gets up to speed friggin' quick. That caught me off guard. It felt like a cruiser. It really feels like a cruiser when you're taking off, because you get up to 30 knots. It feels like in just a few seconds. So that's crazy, and that's, of course, very nice when you are in a close-range situation because you can, speed up and slow down much faster than you'll find in any other battleship. But, it is a smaller ship, given its, HP normally relates to tonnage, and only having 84,000 HP means it's, smaller ship than what you'll find at Tier 10. Do keep in mind, too, that, of course, you will be fighting super ships as well in the Tier 10 bracket. So again, in most of those situations, you are a bit of a punching bag for higher tier ships until the game can devolve to the point where you can get in secondary range and then get your secondary guns on target. But once you get within that 12.5 kilometer range, you are just insane. I would not be surprised, fellas, if the Libertad gets nerfed in a bit, because it is that nuts. It really is. Although you are giving up a lot to get this secondary firepower on your tier 10 tech line battleship. So maybe not. Of course, we've all seen this in the past, right? Wargaming will release a ship. It's a little bit overtuned, and they like to wait a couple of months to just change any new release ship. So, 2-3 months go by, and then they nerf it. So it's probably for the best that it's in early access right now. So it's in more players' hands, and we'll see if they nerf it while it's in early access. Probably not. So 4 months before it gets nerfed, and that's my future prediction for today. Other things about it, the AA was actually pretty decent, of course, with me building into secondary guns that does buff the AA, and in more than a few cases, CVs were just hard focusing me down. So that helped with the XP gain. Is it exactly a plane blender? I wouldn't say a plane blender, but it has some pretty decent AA, of course, again, with building into the secondary guns. Main battery guns, it's kind of nice having, turrets that face in all directions, forward and aft, because when you're maneuvering, and again, with how maneuverable the Libertad is, it seems like, no matter what side of the ship I was trying to shoot from, I had at least a turret or two ready to go. So that was kind of nice. And you lose that when you get, out of like tier 5, tier 6. You go to the more standard battleship design, so you don't have all these turrets, in the middle of the ship facing, forward and backwards at random. So that was kind of a nice upside for the ship. So overall, in terms of the Libertad, of course, I would not recommend getting it right now. You have to drop somewhere along the lines like $200 to get it at this very moment because it's in early access. It's kind of nuts right now, but it's not worth dropping 200 clams on at the moment. It's going to be a completely free to research ship in 2 patches, fellas. So you can wait 10 weeks. Obviously, if you do like secondary ships, this is definitely a line I would highly recommend you guys grind out. It's going to be a ship I'm going to be playing a whole lot of. If you come out to the stream tonight, we'll be playing probably a fair amount of it on stream for you guys tonight, so you can get an even better idea of what the ship is like. But overall, if I had to give it a numerical rating, this ship would get I want to give it a 9, but let's give it an 8, because in a lot of situations in tier 10 games, it's not going to be that useful, because again of how passive the meta is at high tier. But in those situations when you can get into a brawling match, it is a 10 out of 10. So if there's like tier 10 brawls, or you are just somehow managing to get into consistent brawls, it is a 10 out of 10 in my mind. If they given it torpedoes, it would have been just, it would be broken at that point. So 10 out of 10 if you can get into those brawling situations, 8 out of 10 for, you know, most tier 10 ship duties, because again, when it can get into those brawling situations, it is insane. Other than that, you're just again playing like a worse Conqueror or a worse Montana at that point. But one I would recommend you guys grind out, especially if you are a fan of secondary ships. The pros, of course, being, well, I mean, you got all the secondary guns. The main battery is also pretty solid, too. Again, it can fall back and do, like, mid-range duty, but once again, at a level underneath the Montana and the Conqueror. So, of course, the secondary guns, you get those 234mm guns. 12.5 kilometer range is very nice. F button is absolutely absurd. Again, wouldn't be surprised if that eventually gets changed. The armor is quite good at close-in engagements. Big middle finger with that 52mm plating all over the ship to most light cruisers. That's very lovely. It's very maneuverable. Got that 13.8 second rudder shift time. Accelerates incredibly quickly, and the AA is actually pretty decent from my experience. Downsides, I'm sorry, for upsides too, it gets that improved heal with that improved runtime, and you get the improved runtime damage con as well. Now to the cons. 20k less HP than other tier 10 battleships. It is chunky at range when you come across larger caliber battleship guns. You have a 33-second reload on those 16-inch guns, and it doesn't really get any other consumables. I mean, it really doesn't. You have a heal and a damage con. That's it. So the utility is quite low, but again, got to give up some to get that funny F button. So guys, that is my review of the Libertad. Let me know in the comments down below if you have decided to pick one of these up in early access. How are you finding it? How are you finding the experience playing against it? Let me know all that jazz in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Friday, wonderful rest of your week. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Helps on the YouTube side of things. Again, guys, hope you have a wonderful Friday. Hope to see you guys out here on the stream tonight. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. And lastly, I hope to catch you guys in the next one.